Good evening, leaders. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you, sir. Good evening, leaders, and welcome to today's Knowledge Exchange Conclave. Hope you are fine and probably at your home or about leaving the office or in traffic. We're grateful for joining today's KEC section as it promises to be enriching, looking at the wealth of experience Today, we will be talking about career options in public policy. Can anyone still hear me, please?
Yes, sir,
Yes, I
I
can hear
can
you.
hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Today, we'll be talking about career options in public policy. And our speaker for today is Dr. Efosa Trevor Edobo. So in the next 3 to 4 minutes, I'm going to read out his profile. And by 7:10, we would begin. So Efosa Trevor Edobo is a medical doctor with 4 years of professional experience in clinical, medical, public health, and public policy. In his last engagement, he worked with the Center for Sustainable Healthcare, CHH, to commence the inclusion of sustainability health education in the curriculum of medical students and doctors in training in the United Kingdom. He's passionate about reducing the carbon footprints of healthcare and also the achievements of universal health coverage in Africa. In 2017, he was awarded the Africa Initiative for Governance fully sponsors 5 high achieving West Africans who have shown great potentials in leadership and in having significant impact in Africa. The AIG scholarships enables them to attend the Blavatsky School of Government, BSG, the University of Oxford, United Kingdom, and study for a Master of Public Policy. Dr. Trevor is a member of Oxford Entrepreneurs, a Young African Leaders Initiative alumnus, YALI, and a GlaxoSmithKline Clegg Health Innovator. He had his undergraduate degree at the University of Benin and a master's at the University of Oxford. He has worked as a special assistant to the Kaduna State Governor and is currently a research fellow at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and also a non-resident fellow of the Nigerian Global Affairs Council. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome on board Dr. Efosa Trevor. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Trevor. I prefer to be known as Trevor. If you notice, I don't have the doctor on my name, just feel more at ease if you just call me my name, Trevor. Trevor is fine. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about career opportunities in public policy. So yeah, I did make a presentation, or rather a slide, just to guide our discussion. I'm told we have about 45 minutes to complete this. So I will be as engaging and as direct as I can be. One moment, so I share my screen. Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So yeah, to start, I did break it down into 3 things: think, decide, and act. So firstly, you would have to think, yeah, if public policy in the first place is right for you. So that process is going to go, because it's going to start by you thinking, okay, do I want to do public policy? Do I have what it takes? Is this what's right for me? Just how much would I achieve if I go into public policy? Will it make me happy? What am I looking to change? Yeah, those are fundamental questions you'd ask yourself if you're thinking about going into public policy or even changing careers in the first place. Usually there are a very few people who would, from their undergraduate degrees, think that it's public policy they want to do in the first, right off the bat. So there are very few people who initially would say, you know what, I want to be a public policy analyst, or I want to be a public policy researcher. And that's not something you think of when you're in SS3. You usually would think of maybe arts, management sciences, physical sciences, the medicals, law, and stuff like that. So I think there are just a few schools, University of Ibadan, if I remember correctly, that have an undergraduate degree in public policy in the first place. So your options are quite limited. But that doesn't mean you cannot go into public policy or create a career in public policy if you've done something else. More on that later. The second thing is to decide. So now you've thought about it, then you decide. This one is quite straightforward. All you need to do is, hey, you know what? I'm going to do public policy. And yeah, once you've made that decision, the next thing is to act. Straight, you then start making conscious plans and conscious efforts to reach that place where you want to be. More, think of it like creating a niche for yourself in the public policy space, because it's quite vast. There are a lot to choose from, so you would want to carefully curate your experience as you move along. So the next thing is just a brief slide showing what we're going to be talking about today. So an introduction where we would gather thoughts around the room on what public policy is, what you might think are the career opportunities in public policy, if you think you need, or rather what you think you might need to have a career in public policy. So would go around the room and decide, or rather hear sample opinions from everyone. And then, quite straightforward, we would then look at the career opportunities one might have in public policy, and then conclusion, and then there'll be opportunity for questions in the end. So, yeah, I'll be taking this session. The goal of the session is to explore career opportunities in public policy, and then just introduce to your mind how to plan or how to go forward if you have decided that you want to do something in public policy. I mean, if you're part of the Nigerian Global Affairs Council, then you must have been thinking that you want at some point to influence public policy in Nigeria, maybe on the local level, it could be at the state level, it could be at the federal level. So you must have had that thought. And so yeah, this should be helpful. So let's begin. Like I said, it's going to be quite straightforward and direct, and then there's going to be opportunities for participation. Now, first, think. Now, I just want to sample around the room what we might think public policy is. So just around the room, if you could type in the chat box, that would be helpful, what you think public policy is. Or if you want to speak, yeah, you can just indicate by raising your hand using the virtual tools, and then the moderator can decide who speaks or not. So yeah, let's hear what you think public policy is. I think this should be an easy one. Yeah, just go ahead and speak. I think I don't think you need. If no one's talking, then you can contribute. Anyone? So I have a second monitor here, so I'm going to be reading some of the contributions.
Okay. I think we have one on the chat box.
Yeah. Course of action created and or enacted typically by government to respond to public reward problems. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Anyone else? Yeah, we will go through what public policies are, and yeah, but I just want to get a general feel around the room what you might think public policy is. We'll take one or two more responses and then we'll move on. No one wants to speak?
You said we could either write it here or
You can either write or
Yes.
speak.
yeah,
Yes.
I've done mine.
Yeah, I think some are typing. Some might be typing also.
Okay, yeah, I've seen the second one. Public policy is a course of action created by government or organization to address problems in society or in the organization. Absolutely. Yeah, if you have other thoughts, you can keep adding, and then I would see them and address them as we go on. So yeah, public policy, like you've said, is a course of action, or if I should say, group of actions, yeah, taken towards solving a problem or an issue, specific issues usually, to achieve a certain goal. Yeah, so it could be used by governments. Usually, public policies are used by governments. It could be used by private organizations. It could be used by advocacy organizations. It could be used by communication organizations. So, but yeah, in the real sense of public policy, it is basically the government using public policy tools to solve public issues. Yeah, and some of the public policy tools, like we all know, are laws, debates, public-private partnerships, policy briefs, policies, summaries, some of the things that we already have been doing as part of the Nigerian Global Affairs Council. So that part shouldn't be very new to everyone. So now there is another concept, which is public value. So governments use public policy, yeah, to try to solve, if I should say, public problems, to create public value. Now, you want to use a policy to solve a problem, but that problem has to be a problem that can create value. For example, the government would want to use, say, deregulation of the upstream and downstream sectors of the petroleum industry to solve the problem of fuel shortages and subsidies in the country, making fuel more available to its citizens. So yeah, that's something that at this time Nigerians are interested in. So that's you solving a problem that is bringing value. Now, value on its own is something that is determined, yeah, by the collective need of the people you are governing. So what constitutes public value in Romania, for example, could be totally different from what constitutes public value in Nigeria. So what constitutes public value in Ghana could be different from what constitutes public value in Cameroon. So it is determined by what the people collectively agree that is right for them. So a great example of something that would bring good public value to Nigeria would be fixing our health system, um, fixing our water system, our electricity system. Now, something like fighting for the rights of, let's not say fighting for the rights, but making, for example, the issue of the LGBT community, for example, in Nigeria. Yes, it does have public value because, yes, we have those people in Nigeria, but it wouldn't be as salient in Nigeria as it is right now in developed countries like the United States or the United Kingdom. So that could be top of their own list, but bottom or the mid place of our own list. Climate change, for example, is top of the list in countries like China, the US, well, now the US, Trump didn't care about it. The UK, renewable energy is making waves in developed countries. But we can see that even though Nigeria is trying to join the bandwagon of countries that care about renewable energy, recycling, it is not top of our list. I mean, if a government official, for example, who wishes for re-election comes out with a platform of saying, you know what, I'm going to make Nigeria run on 100% renewable energy, they are most likely not going to win because that's not really top of the public value list of the country. So yes, public value is determined by the collective aspirations of the people that are governed or of the people that your organization is targeting. So public value in the youth space, for example, as it concerns the NiGAC would be people who are interested in policy, people who are interested in electoral processes, people who are interested in governance. So yeah, that is the kind of content, that is the kind of training, that's the kind of things that, if provided, would appeal to the NiGAC community. So that's an explanation of how governments can use public policy tools to solve problems that can create public value. Yeah. So next would be straight into it, career options that we can have. Now, I have divided this into private sector jobs, non-profit sector jobs, government sector jobs. There was a really great website that I got some of my information from. I would put the reference in at the end, and then when I send it to everybody, you would have it. So we'll just take them one after the other. For example, private sector jobs, government relations manager. Now, I think I can clearly recall being in a few interviews for government relations manager. So this particular role would need you to have very streamlined, if I should say, knowledge about about policies that relate to the part of government that you're targeting. For example, there was an advert for a position from Google. They needed a government relations manager, could be officer, could be support for the Nigerian government, because at the time they were scared of internet shutdowns, they were scared of blocking access of Google in the country. I mean, China has done it before. So your job in that kind of role would be to find the policies, right, that are relevant to the organization, study them, liaise with the government officials, find out what they are thinking and the direction of their agenda. So every government comes into power with an agenda, the Nigeria Economic Recovery Plan, the Nigerian National Development Plans for 2021 to 2030, 2030 to 2021 to 2025, 2026 to 2030, 2030 to 2050, and the long-term Nigerian Development Plan. So your job usually would be to study these plans, look at the general direction of the country, see if it benefits the company, try to influence government decisions regarding your target policies, and if that fails, advise on possible ways to mitigate the issues in your country, in your company, or advice that they look elsewhere. For example, Twitter, for example, would have done something like this. They must have come to Nigeria, gone to Ghana, gone to Senegal, go to most of the West African countries in a bid to create a presence in West Africa or in Africa as a whole. And they must have thought, oh, the direction of Nigeria is not really tech. It's not really pro-tech, for example. Probably they would have analyzed that Nigeria has spurious policies that can affect technology companies in ways that can affect revenue significantly. A good example would be when Okada was banned in Lagos. Gokada, Opay, that were very big at the time. Technology companies had to, basically look elsewhere. Second example would be the ban of Twitter, and technology companies will look, for example, oh, this definitely doesn't favor our companies. The country is not moving in the right direction. So that would be your job. That would be your own job, and that's what you're going to be doing. So people, for example, who are talking to the Nigerian government now to lift the ban on Twitter, they most likely will be government relations managers, government relations officers, and yeah, that's most likely going to be their role. And second one is corporate communications. I think this is clear cut. So there is a very strong link between policies and communication. Now, take for example, the government makes a policy. Oh no, there's a very good example. So COVID, we've had COVID, yeah, and then we've had vaccines and vaccination. Now, the government must have said, fine, there is a policy on COVID. Everyone who is under 60 and above 18 is eligible to have COVID vaccine. Now we've gotten about, for example, 4 million vaccines, and now we have to vaccinate Nigerians. You, as a government, making the policy doesn't stop at you making the policy, getting everything ready. There's still a very strong role of communication. So how do you get people to come out? How do you get people to understand the policy that you have put down? How do you get people to understand the direction of the policy? How do you get people to understand how they will benefit from the policy that you have done? Now, this requires someone who has a very good knowledge of policies and communication skills. As we will see later, communication skills are one of the most sought for skills in people who are in the public policy space. So yeah, I think that's quite straightforward. Public relations and marketing manager, same thing, very close to communication. You that have made this policy, you understand this policy, you know what your aims are, but how do you sell it? How do you sell the policy? How do you sell the policy to the masses? If Nigeria comes out today and say, you know what, subsidies are going to benefit Nigerians in the long run, even if they will, they need to get it out there to Nigerians, and Nigerians have to accept. If they say, for example, COVID, oh, this is quite common, COVID vaccine is good for your health. Policy on COVID vaccine. Everyone who visits their local government vaccination centers and are eligible should get the vaccine. That's fine. That's on paper. You have the policy brief, you have the policy documents. How do you sell it? So that's how do you relate with the public? How do you market your policy? So I mean, that's quite straightforward. And this usually happens more in private sector organizations. And that's another reason why government organizations do not achieve as much as private organizations, especially in the public policies field, because they tend to neglect the communication and the marketing aspect of it. An official government Twitter page just comes up and says, you know what, we've done this, we've done that, and that's it. And it's more like you think, or rather, it's more like it's thought that just dishing out the information or writing the policy is enough to get people to assemble around the policy goals and then just start doing things. Even with excellent communication, we still have people who will not key into the policy goals or make good use of the policies that you have put out. And now think of that when there's no communication, there's no marketing, there's no public relations. Consultancy. This is also quite straightforward. If you've got a very good knowledge about policies in a particular sector or area, you can then offer your services to private sector organizations, governments who might need your expertise. For example, the National Development Plan that we are currently working on, we have external consultants, and some of us were hired as consultants just to advise the government on the direction of the policies of the plan. So that's one really nice, but quite uncertain job you could get, or career that you could decide to favor if you're into the public policy space. Government tech firm, that's straightforward. Policy-related media opportunities, that's still quite straightforward. You could decide that you want to, in your own experience, focus on the media aspect of policy. So how do you reach out to people? How do you paint the government and the government's policy, or if it's a private sector organization, how do you paint them and their policies in a way that would favor people identifying with that policy? A good example I can give is would be Apple, for example. So Apple is a private sector organization, probably have a policy of moving away from hardware to services. So they tend to then start their marketing and their media operations in a way that people would see that services are an integral part of having an Apple device. So they sell you Apple Music, they sell you Apple TV, they sell you Apple TV Plus, just to make you feel like, you know what, I think this company is going the right way. It's not about the phones, it's about how everything just works together. And then you start feeling, oh, it just works. The phone works with this, that works with that. So that's them selling you the future goal and the policy direction of the company. Academic positions, definitely. You could teach at a university, you could be a research assistant, you could be a research fellow, you could be a research associate. And in the non-profit sector, like most of us are currently doing for the Nigerian Global Affairs Council, you do research, you do policy briefs, you do policy documents. And then that just gives you a platform basically to sharpen your policy analysis skills, and do that for a number of years, or maybe not years, but a number of a good number of times, basically. And then you can jump into other roles like government relation manager, like a consultant. So yeah, and then there's foundation. So from community work to national philanthropy, from I'm trying to think of a good example of this. So cancer awareness, Cancer Awareness UK, or in Nigeria, we have Save the Children. So things like that. Those non-for-profit organizations like Views and Melinda Gates, for example, McKinsey and Company, the Nigerian, can't quite recall the full acronym. Nigeria, no, not Nigeria, the International Center for ICCD, I can't quite recall the full thing. Yeah, so you could do that. Think tank, that's quite very straightforward. So McKinsey and Co is a think tank. We have the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, which is a think tank. We have the BCG. We have Ernst and Young. So we have we have Deloitte. So some of these companies, why you might think that, oh, they are quite focused on auditing, or they're quite focused on financial aspects. So it doesn't also mean that they don't utilize a lot of policy tools. For example, Deloitte, for example, even if they are quite focused on finance, they definitely do a lot of finance policies too. So fiscal policies, monetary policies, they advise the central bank, they do their research and see how people are responding to, for example, inflation rates and deflation rates and currency changes. So yeah, you could choose what you want. So there's a wide range of things you could do. So it could be, say, for example, like what I do, health policy, information technology. It could be identity and population management. It could be trade and fiscal management. It could be monetary policies. It could be things that you think don't matter. For example, it could be sexual health policy. It could be something as small as I'm thinking of something that you might not have thought would be relevant in the policy space. What can I come up with now? Oh yeah, food hygiene policy. Something as small as that, you could create your own niche in that particular policy space, and that's it. You become the go-to person if they have any questions, or if they're looking for someone in that space. I've seen quite a few job role advertisements that the requirement is very, very much, would I say, narrow. So the requirements are very narrow. So we want someone who has been working in the dairy livestock policy space. So it can be quite narrow. Yeah, you could be a professor, you could be a lecturer. I think we now have the Ibadan School of Public Policy. I think there's another School of Public Policy that is currently in works, but I don't think they've started yet. So that's something you could consider. Then, of course, there's government roles. You could be a legislature, you could be in the legislature, you could be in the executive, not so much in the judiciary, but you could definitely be in the executive and the legislature. You could be an aide, you could be a special assistant, you could be special advisor, you could even run for public office if you think that's something for you. And of course, public service in whichever capacity would be something that you could also consider. Yeah, then you could be a program analyst, you could be a project analyst, you could be in the intelligence services, like in the military, you could be in the police force, you could be, in other countries, they do have things like city managers and mayors, so you could think of things like that. You could be a senator, you could run for election, foreign service, you could do foreign affairs, internal affairs, You could be an ambassador. So yeah, there's just quite a bit to choose from. All you need to do first is to decide which of the policies which of the policy areas am I going to focus on? Do I want to do it in health? Do I want to do it in agriculture? Do I want to do it in finance? Do I want to do it in tech? So pick and choose. And it could be something really small. It could be something really narrow rather. And yeah, just be there. Yeah, if you do have any other career opportunities that you have thought of that you may have been considering it, you can put it in the chat box and then I will talk about it. Now the next thing we'll have to discuss is what do you do? What do you think you need to get into the career path that you want? So if you have identified the career path that you want, for example, I want to do something that is not very popular, let's say agricultural policy, for example. So the good part about policies is that it really doesn't matter a lot where you have been. So it doesn't matter what you did for your undergraduate. If you have a master's degree, it doesn't really matter what you did in your master's. It doesn't even matter if you have a master's, it doesn't even, but some form of academic requirement, yeah, is necessary for you to be in policy, because it can be quite academic, except you're going for elected. Even if you're going for elected positions, you should be able to engage in the policies that are relevant to your constituencies and be able to provide that public value that you want to give, that you wish for the people in your constituency. So you have to think of it. So if I want to do agricultural policy, for example, what do I need? Do I need a master's? Do I need to be a research assistant for some time? Do I need to write more on agricultural policies? Do I need to research more on agricultural policies? If it's agricultural policies, then which one? Am I thinking dairy? Am I thinking livestock? Am I thinking crops? Am I thinking skin and hide? So you just narrow it down and then start. So I'm aware we have about 10 minutes, yeah, and what I would do is just let you write as we go along in the chat box what you think are the skills that you require that everyone who is in the public policy space should have. They're not a lot, or they're not a lot. The main ones are not a lot. So just type on, and as we go, we would address those. What are the skills you think that are the most sought skills in people who are in the public policy space? Absolutely, I've seen one, negotiation skills. Absolutely, that's very correct. And so, yeah, I've put this down. If you think and have decided that public policy is for you, make the move and start to develop your pedigree in this space. So research skills, absolutely, because you should be able to synthesize information, see where people have failed, and see how you would, in your own case, make the best of the opportunity to provide that public value that you have been seeking to drive. Negotiation skills, absolutely. Research skills, negotiation in the sense that you should be able to work your way through difficult situations. So of course, no, everyone is not going to swallow your policy hook, line, and sinker. You would have to negotiate with people, excuse me if I have to use the word, negotiate with people, clearly clearly looking at it from their own view and having that discussion on how to make the policy even better and more relevant for them. Absolutely, problem solving skills, that's one of the top most requested skills in people in public policy space. So yes, problem solving skills, it's one of the top skills. So there is a cycle of problem solving where you identify the issue, you think about the issue, then you identify how you're going to solve it, you implement, and then you evaluate. It's a continuous cycle. So there are different models for problem solving. We won't get into that today. Communication skills, absolutely. That's one of the top 5 skills that are required in people who are in the public policy space. Communication skills, problem solving skills, and analytical thinking. So analytical thinking is something that is highly sought of. So it's a way, there wouldn't be time to explain it, but it is a way of thinking. It's an objective way of thinking about problems where you can analyze every aspect of the problem and then come up with the best solution. Yes, policy analysis skills, absolutely. Monitoring and evaluation, absolutely. Monitoring and evaluation in its own can be a career in itself. So you could say, all I want to do is to monitor and evaluate policies and see where they've gone wrong and see what we can do, what we can improve on. Is this working? Are we reaching our goals? And yeah, and that's a skill that is very, very much sought after. Stakeholder engagement, absolutely. You need to be able to speak with your stakeholders. For example, like the one we mentioned before, government relations officer. I mean, if you can't talk to the government or you can't talk to people, you definitely would not thrive in that kind of job role. Others would include teamwork. You should be able to work in teams because usually policy research and analysis does require you to have a team. Although you can do a few things yourself, but you would definitely need a team. I see your hand is up. Can't see your name, sorry. One moment. Tosin, yeah. If you want to say something there, you can have 1 minute to ask a question. No, not ask a question, but give a contribution. There'll be opportunity for questions. And yes, we would go on as you continue to populate the chat box. And that is it from me. So yeah, from now I'll take questions and answer any thoughts that you may have had or any questions you may have put down before the session, or anything that's still bothering you as to what the career opportunities are in public policy. Thank you. So back to you, moderator. Or can they just ask questions? I'm not sure how that's going to happen.
They can ask questions.
Oh, absolutely. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. You can type it in the chat box if you don't want your voice to be heard, but I'll prefer you ask. Is there a particular way to start? No, so there isn't any particular way to start. All you have to do is to think, is this what I want? Because it's not defined, yeah? So being in the public policy space it's not something you say, okay, fine, I want to do public policy. Now I'm going to read public policy as part of my undergraduate degrees, then I'll do a master's in public policy, then I'll work in a public policy organization. It's not defined. You are going to do is, fine, is this what I want? And then decide which part of public policy am I going to go into, because it is quite wide. You can get lost. You can get lost. You are there. You're already in NiGAC, which is an excellent start, I must say. You at this point you'll be exposed to policy analysis, policy tracking, monitoring and evaluation, policy brief. So that's a very good way to start. So you can look at policies and then synthesize: is this policy good? What can we do to change it? And then you can even sit in your. I think to some extent, you can now sit, do your research, and come up with a policy suggestion, for example, or a policy brief to address a problem. So what you would want to do is focus on a particular policy area because you can get lost. Focus on a particular policy area, for example, say health. And in health, you can even streamline it. You can say, I want to do HIV and AIDS prevention and control policies. And then do a lot of research on HIV policy, prevention and control, seminars, research articles, events. I mean, NiGAC does organize a lot of these events. So if you want to do it, for example, in electoral processes, attend town hall meetings, attend exchange conclaves that are relevant to the policy that you want to hone in on. But yes, the first things you want to do is to develop your soft skills, so your problem-solving skills, your analytical skills, your research skills, your ability to synthesize information, your communication skills. Absolutely. Then do that. You will find yourself being more confident when it comes to policy. And once you have that confidence, you can then just drive into the policy that you want. And yeah, look out for those opportunities that are relevant to the policy that you want to do. For example, if you want to do tech policy, you should be looking for roles like, you can start with something like a program officer or a government relations officer or a communications officer or communication support. Things like that can then build your pedigree in that particular policy space. NiGAC is good. You could volunteer to be a research fellow. You could volunteer to help people analyze a particular policy. I think these kind of opportunities, they do float around. And then you can just key into it. Sometimes you can start unpaid. And then when you have some pedigree in that policy space, you can then start requesting for money. And yes, it should be good money. So when it comes to making policies for government, how has policy helped curb the excesses of government citing Twitter ban and VAT rate? Yeah, so that's why I say the policy space can be quite unforgiving, I would say, and you can get lost. Now, for example, there's been a lot of advocacy organizations, NiGAC included, that have created excellent documents and presented to the government and followed it up. Yeah, so they follow it up with policy tracking, policy engagement, policy negotiations. So that's why your negotiation skills have to be excellent. Policy negotiations. It's still the government at the end of the day, or your target population or your target organization that would make the final call. And for government, unfortunately, there is the problem of politics, which cannot be decoupled from government. So, and I mean, there are policies that the government knows that absolutely this policy would improve the lives of Nigerians. But there is a political aspect of it. How many people, for example, how many people, when I raise this bill at the floor of the Senate, would support? Would this bill even cross first reading? Would this bill even make it to second reading? So there are all these things that they have to consider. And the truth is, the best you can do is to make the policy, advocate for the policy. Of course, one person can't do this. That's why I said teamwork is quite important. Research the policy, advocate for the policy, keep hitting on it. So a good example would be BVN. So BVN started as a discussion at the Nigerian Economic Summit group in one of the Nigerian Economic Summits. And then they spoke about having one system that unifies financial accounts in Nigeria. And Central Bank accepted it. And that was how BVN all started. Now we have everybody with BVN, you link all your accounts, everyone thinks it's nice to some extent. But that's a successful policy. So for every successful implementation of a policy, there are a million others that have may have gone under the carpet. Yeah. So a senator, for example, will not sponsor a bill that he knows is doomed to fail. So, for example, trying to sponsor at this time, say, what example would I use now? Reduction, for example, in access to internet in Nigeria. So anything that kind of, well, it may have its uses, for example, let's say tracking, for example, tracking of chats or tracking of exchanges on mobile networks. Of course, it may have its uses. It may curb excesses. It may help security forces to be more efficient. But that's a discussion that is not ready, or rather that cannot be had right now in Nigeria, because people are already very angry that the government keeps restricting and reducing and constricting the freedom of the citizens. So that kind of policy, even though it has good uses, it's not going to fly. So again, another thing that people in the policy space should do is be able to read the times, basically. A policy that was useless 10 years ago can be the number one policy now. The petroleum, the PIB, that bill would have been thrown off to some 20 years ago. But right now, it's top of the list. So, for example, a bill now talking about security in Nigeria would be top of the list. Whereas a bill trying to fight for the rights of marginalized people in the southeast, or in a small village in the southeast of Nigeria, it's not going to fly, because the country just feels, in quote, they have bigger things to deal with. So yeah, so you have to also read the times to decide, oh, does this policy I'm trying to go in? Of course, it does make sense, but does it make sense right now? And then there's the window of opportunity that you should also try. That's a concept on its own anyway, but there's a window of opportunity that people in the policy space have to be aware of. It's where public value and the political will and the right policy all come together. For example, vaccination. Of course, there have been policies on vaccinations before. They just fly under the radar. Some people get vaccinated, others don't get vaccinated. Communication is poor. But with COVID and COVID vaccination, it has become a hot topic. So if you have a policy that has been battered in the last 5-10 years, it automatically has become an interesting policy right now. So when it comes to making policies, yes, there are good policies, but there are a few factors that decide whether policies are good at the time or whether the policy would be adopted even if they are good at the time. So a good policy, exceptionally good policy, might not be adopted just because of the timing. Yeah, it's not in the window of opportunity, for example. So, for example, a policy to expand the powers of companies like Twitter and Google in Nigeria, it's trash right now. It's not going to happen. But give it maybe another 5-10 years when it becomes very important to have access to information, then it could be a good policy for it. Maybe we've started things like online teaching or virtual classrooms. Then you will see that, expanding internet access and access to these international tech companies then will become a very interesting topic to talk about. But for now, it's trash. So that's just how policies work. So let you rephrase, when it comes to making policies for government, how has policymakers helped curb government excesses citing Twitter ban? Oh yeah, so in this current Twitter ban fight, yeah, Bitcoin ban and other policies that the citizens have said is unfavorable. Like I said, it is about the times, yeah. It is definitely now harder for policymakers to, in quote, change the mind of the government or change the direction of the government. Of course, you would expect that there are policies and policy briefs that have been written and presented on the floor and spoken about the Twitter ban and how to reverse it. But it is just at this point much more harder. So policymakers may be doing a absolutely serious work, but it's just that at this time, the window of opportunity is gone. So they would have to keep pushing. So another example is state police. So the talks of state police did not start 2 years ago. The Nigerian Economic Summit Group have been speaking about decentralized security systems in Nigeria for over 10 years. So for over 10 years, there's been push on the policy for decentralization of security services. But it's just now that it's making sense. So that's unfortunately the way policies work. Sometimes it's excellent and the time is right and you just key into that window of opportunity and everything goes on semi-smoothly. But other times you do everything possible and your policy just gets thrown into the bin. So that's something you should be ready for. There is, or rather there are a lot of other considerations apart from how strong or how solid your policy is. In the real world, you have politics, you have finances. So if you want to say, for example, improve the quality of education in Nigeria across all tertiary institutions, fine, great policy. Everybody wants it. ASU wants that. The legislature wants that. The executive wants that. Oh, we don't have the money for that. We have people. I'm just saying I'm not saying we don't have the money, but I'm just saying what can mitigate that, or rather what can work against that policy. They could say we don't have the policy for that. We have bigger problems. We have to solve security issues. We have to solve our health issues. We are ranking fourth from the bottom in health systems in the world. And you are talking about education. Even though our education is bad, I mean, there's something. So let's salvage the ones that are getting worse. We have Boko Haram now. We have kidnapping as a new business or sector of the economy, like I like to call it. But yeah, so you just, for policies, it's really difficult to identify that window of opportunity. You would think that, oh, these people have to do more. Yes, they have to do more, but if you do observe closely, you would see that they are doing quite a lot. And there are a lot of policies that try to correct things like Twitter ban, Bitcoin ban. But that's not just the way the government is thinking. And unfortunately, there's politics involved. There's government agenda involved. There's overall policy direction in the next decade, for example, involved. So Nigerian development plans, for example, is till 2050. So if Nigeria has laid down a plan till 2050, it's just going to be more difficult to advocate for something that is not on that plan. You're just going to do more work. For example, if Nigeria has said, yes, in 2050, we are going to have population control, everybody in Nigeria would have 3 children, and we'll put things in place to make sure people are enchanted from having more than 3 children. If me as a policy maker, my specialty is population identity control, population management and identity control, that's field day for me. I've hit jackpot. But if, for example, I'm someone who my policy area is on import of agricultural produce, and Nigeria is shifting away from importation of agricultural produce to homegrown agricultural solutions. That's it for me. I need to switch base. I need to find something else to do, or find another organization to target, because the country or your target organization is not thinking what you're thinking, and it's not your fault. It's not like you are not doing enough. You are just your own issue is just not salient at the time. Yeah, that's it. Any other question?
Wow.
Yes, I have a question. Or
Yeah.
questions.
Okay.
Please, what are the processes involved in making these policies, and does the executive and legislature debate or deliberate on issues or intended solutions to problems before they become policies, or the executive or does the executive just come out and say they want to ban the importation of these or Twitter and all that, and it becomes a policy for them?
Mr. Davis, we
Yeah, okay. So to your first question, the processes. So as I'll start as an individual. So as an individual, an individual policy analyst or policy maker, or that, your process would be identify a problem, research around the problem, profile possible ways to solve that problem, go around and implement your solutions, and then evaluate how well you've done, or you are doing, because it's a continuous process. As a government, so for the legislature, it's quite different from the executive. And for the legislature, they have to go through, propose a bill, go to first reading, go to second reading, have buy-in, speak with other people, negotiate into coalitions, vote in support of a particular bill, get it to the president to assent, and all that process. So that's how the legislature functions. And when the president assents to it, it then becomes law. And that's that process. For the executive, however, it's a bit different. So we have executive orders, we have which are just basically the executive saying, you know what, there is this problem, and we have thought about it, we have profiled this solution, and this is what we are doing. Now, executive orders are usually short-term. They are not long-term solutions to problems. They are not law, as you would think, but they are binding, because yes, the executive does have that autonomy as a separate tier of government to decide what it tends to do about problems before the legislature then puts it into law or repeals it. So yes, the executive can come out and say, you know what, there's too much kidnapping, everybody stay in your house. That's executive. So if the legislature thinks it's nice, and everybody should stay in their houses, what they do is they present it to the floor, and then they work their way up towards presidential assent, and when that happens, it becomes law. So you then have a binding document that says that in Nigeria as a whole, everybody stays indoors. But if it's an executive order, it's just everybody stay indoors, and there's usually a time frame for it. So everybody stay indoors for the next 6 months. Everybody stay indoors. So the executive order cannot be everybody stay indoors forever. No, that can't happen. But once it's a law, then it becomes forever until it's changed. So I think that's part of the reason NiGAC had gotten everyone involved in the constitution reform, and try to make everyone actively participate, because everything that becomes law, everything that is changed in the constitution, it's long term. Until the constitution is reviewed and changed again, it remains, and it becomes a legal block to anything that tries to oppose it. Yeah. Any other questions? I hope I answered your question anyway.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we are running out of time.
Yeah.
And we would want to round up on this section. So we could get the slides. We'll surely get the slides from you and share to leaders next week Tuesday in the newsletter. So thank you
It's actually told you. Thank you, Mr. Efosa. Thank you, Dr. Efosa, for this insightful presentation. Like you have really exposed us to so many areas of the public policy and ways in which you could contribute, especially starting as NiGAC fellows. So